It's always a joy to be able to come and talk to you about things that have gone well. And so what we're going to do tonight is look at what we've achieved and where the directions we'd like to be going. So we'll just look at these and follow it through. I have, of course, been going round to home groups, so some of this will be familiar to those people. Others have yet to hear it and see it. So can we have the next slide, please? So the first thing is, as you can see from looking around you, that the internal changes have been completed. And we, again, echoing Graham and Melvin's comments on that, we do thank God that the plans which were just literally in our minds not so very long ago have become a reality, and you will have experienced it not only for occasions like this in our regular services, but the flexibility it's given us in so many different sorts of activities, not only for ourselves, but for the primary school and so on. So that's been a great joy. Next one, please. We have had plans all the way through to build an extension out to that side of the church. There were earlier plans, which we had about 18 months ago, but when we discussed them with everyone and said, well, these are what our ideas are looking like, they said, well, what about the parish hall? And so next bullet point, please. We've now taken all these comments on board. We've given considerable thought to the parish hall, its present state, and what might be done to incorporate the facilities and the space that it provides at the present time. And as a result of that, the architect has produced new costed plans, and that's what we're going to be looking at. But before we look at the plans themselves, can we have the next slide, please? And one more. We're all very much aware that the priority in the parish and for the church at the moment is to make sure that the ministry funding is assured for this year and for future years. We heard Melvin telling us in January about the situation at that time, and we've recently had a gift day which was wonderfully responded to for the trust income as well. But we've still got to, as it were, keep an eye on what's happening and how the giving is going, because nearly all of the expenditure, as Melvin explained, is going on staff and other recurring amounts each year. So the increased income needs to be going on year after year. That's challenging, but clearly we don't want to be putting ourselves into a position where we can't continue the many activities and functions that are described in the report, simply because we haven't put enough money to one side. Next, please. But in fact, the planning of these new buildings will take another year anyway. So that gives us time, as it were, to take stock, see how we're doing on the funding for the ministry, and then as and when the plans are ready to go, we can review that and say, right, is this now the time, as it were, to press the button? Thanks, Ed. So when the ministry funding needs have been met, then we'll start raising funds for the building. And we're very much looking both to the PCC and to the Trust to keep us all in the picture as how things are going with that. Thank you. Let's have the next. So let's have a look at the plans. Can you next plan as well? Now this first one, you don't need to look at any details, but the whole point of this is just to give you an idea of where it sits in the scheme of things. So here's where we're sitting. Here's the church now here, and the chancel at this end, and that's obviously where we came in through the porch and the baptistry just over there. So everything in grey, as it were, is the existing church. And then what goes out here at the moment, there's the toilet, there's the drink preparation area, and the room that used to be used as the creche. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of the where it is in the scheme of things. Next slide, please. Now, these are the architect's plans. These are the plans that he drew up some months ago. We've already been consulting upon them. And I'll just briefly take you through them so you get some idea. So once again, here's the end of the church, the way we came in, the porch and the entrance coming in there. Here, which is the drinks prep room and the old creche room, is proposed to be a kitchen. And all this orange area is the welcome and entrance area. I'll come back to that at the moment. We can't think of a good name for it because it's much, much more than just that. But there's the main entrance, which is effectively where the ramp is at the moment outside. So you'll come in through the main entrance there and into this open welcome area. Kitchen there. The architect has put a disabled toilet in the corner of that, and then women's toilets and men's toilets, so that all the toilets are together there. Then coming down here, we've got quite a significant extension, and this is particularly the addition to take account of the parish hall. We need two big rooms, basically. We need one for creche, And we need another one for one of the other children's groups on a Sunday morning, because we've got groups in all of the rooms in the Newland Christian Centre, and we need one more. And at the moment, with the creche in the parish hall, we've got the room through there. So these two rooms here come out onto the wedding lawn. You've got on this side the creche, and on this side a meeting room. And then you've got blue areas which are all storage. So down the side of the meeting room, storage which is dedicated to the meeting room activities, because there'll be different things going on through the week. A small store there which will actually service the church. At the moment, as you know, we've just got this store there which is full of chairs and nothing much else. If, for example, we wanted to get more and bigger tables to have big meal events and so on, then you need somewhere to store them. So that storage is proposed as servicing the church. Then this little area here, which is quite small, and I apologise for that, but it's a store for the creche. Then this small area there is actually a small drinks preparation area, similar to what we've got in the NCC rooms, so that you can prepare hot and cold drinks and small refreshments. So if there's need for drinks for the children, or if you've got, for example, a birthday party that's being held in these rooms, then you've got facilities on site. And then above it, a creche toilet, as it were, specifically to service the creche. Now, the other key feature of this is that the wall that divides the creche and the meeting room will be able to be pulled right back. It's going to be acoustically dampened, so that in fact it is a significant wall, looks like, if you like, wood panelling, so that noise doesn't travel too much from one side to the other. But when you open it up, you've got one really good size room which can be used for purposes for larger events, for young people's groups, for parties and so on. So those are the plans as the architect has drawn them, and those are the plans, as it were, that will stay like this officially for probably the next 6 to 8 months while we're going through consultation. But as a result already of ideas that have emerged from around my visits to the home groups and other people's ideas, we've got a whole number of what we consider to be slight improvements on this. And as Ed presses the button, you'll see things flying into place. So let's have the first one. Can you press the button? So we've taken the toilet, the disabled toilet out of the kitchen to make the kitchen a bigger area. And we've suggested there needs to be a hatch through into the welcome area there. The architect had already put a hatch there for servicing drinks here into the north aisle. But we think there needs to be one there, and I'll come back to that again in a moment. Can you press it again, Ed? Going to swap the toilets around. The men's and women's toilets, as it were, it seemed to us, in terms of size and what was needed, were the one way round. So we're suggesting that they could be swapped around. Next, please. Now I'll do this backwards and forwards a couple of times. Can you go back now again, just so that people know? So what you've got here is you've got two stores, one for the church and the top end of the one for the meeting room. And then you've got this big yellow area going out that way, which is in fact the fire exit that the architect wanted to put there. Now, we're suggesting you don't want a fire exit there anyway. There's a fence running along the back here, and another wall down there, so you don't want 30 or 40 people, if there's a fire, going into a tiny space where they can't go anywhere anyway. But the other benefit, of course, is that if you take that out, you can get more storage space, and previously there was a little pimple of a store there which was going into this room, so it squares the room off and makes it a bit bigger. So that's what we are proposing would be a better way of doing it. Can we have the next, please? And then we put fire doors in what we would see as the obvious place, going straight out onto the wedding lawn so people are out in the open air and can get away. Now, the next bit we're going to look at, don't do it for a minute, Ed, but, oh, well, all right, he's done it. There we go. That's okay. Right. Looking at this area here, related to the creche. Now, we thought much of what he'd put there was a good idea, but we thought it could be used more effectively. So now let's have a look at what we are suggesting. Taking a little bit more out of the welcome area and entrance there, putting a quiet room which opens off the creche, so when you've got babies that are sleeping in buggies and so on, they can be put in there for sleep, but also with a door off the entrance area, so that if people, for example, want to have a quiet chat or a prayer or whatever, they could do so. We've made a little bit more room for a store, where the architect had put 2 toilets for the creche. We don't think it needs 2, we think it only needs 1. But we've then brought the disabled toilet, which had been up there, to there, with an entrance into the foyer area. And each of those 2 toilets would have a baby change in them. Okay, so next please, Ed. Now, these arose from questions. People said, well, where are the buggies going to be parked? In our previous plans, we'd always arranged for this corridor to be slightly wider than just narrow enough to walk through, if you see what I mean. So the buggy park would be there for families, for various activities during the week. And can we do the next one, please, Ed? And then just to remind us, it's there already, in fact, but there are bike racks in the backyard of the Newland Christian Centre. So those are the various what we think would be profitable variations. Now, before we move on, I want to talk about this. We really need a competition for this. What can we call it? Because entrance and welcome area is not really helpful. Let me give you 3 examples of the sorts of things that we believe could be done in it. You'll be aware, particularly on a Sunday morning, when we've got chairs in the north aisle here, when it comes to the end of the service and serving drinks, there's a great rush as we pull tables forward, put chairs around them, and as people stand up, we whip chairs from away from them so that we clear the space. Now, if you've got this welcome area here, with a hatch off there as well, we don't actually have to move the furniture around. People can be moving into this corner for drinks from the hatch in the corner there, but also going out into this bigger welcome area and getting drinks from the hatch from the kitchen there. Think of another situation. Let's say there's a wedding. The wedding itself, the service takes place in the church. At the end of the service, the bridal party come out into this area, the foyer area, and the guests come out, say their hellos, shake hands and so on, and then maybe move down into this area for a drinks reception. And while that's going on, the church is being changed round and laid out for the wedding breakfast with tables and chairs laid out and so on. Here's a third alternative. If there are going to be, shall we, things like a conference in which the church itself is for the big everyone together lectures, if you like, but then they need to break out into smaller rooms where they can go into these and they can go into the NCC. But you may also want to have display areas. There may be an exhibition associated with it. And so you could use this welcome area and the corridor for display. Quite a number of us have been to events like the Yorkshire Gospel Partnership, where 10 of those has a bookstall. So ideal, if you've got a conference going on, you can have people coming out for their coffee and tea break out here, and you can have a bookstall in it where they can browse through the books. So I think there are lots of ideas, and if you can think of one word that describes all of those things and is helpful, because a number of people have commented and said, gosh, there's an awful lot of orange space there, and every time you build more space, it costs more money. Can we make it smaller? Well, the problem is, these are the garages that we don't own there, and it's a funny shape anyway, but we think you could make good use of it. Can we have the next, please, Ed? And this is the architect's idea of what it would look like. So you've got the main entrance, here's the existing church, here's the porch we go in through now, the path coming up from the road, main entrance there, and this then is the front of the creche this side and the meeting room that side, and what we would propose, there would be fire doors coming out there. And the architect suggests that maybe we have a little hedge along there with a gate in it, a paved area, so maybe for holiday clubs or other children's activities, they can come into a protected area, toddler groups and so on. But it also keeps it open and a nice place, sunny, it's south-facing and all the rest of it. Let's have the next slide, please. And this just finally, merely to make the point that there's still a lot of wedding lawn left over. Although the buildings look quite big from the drawings, in fact, there's still a lot of space. Next, please. So what happens now? And again, please. Right, before this summer, I'm going round to home groups. Many of you will know that. I've got about another 4 to visit who I'll be coming round in the summer term. There are 1 or 2 other parish-wide groups that I've got to go to as well. But the whole point of that is to give people opportunities to make suggestions, ask questions. Why are we doing this? Why can't we do that? It's been so helpful in the last 18 months in getting good ideas on board. And I hope you'll agree that the plans we've now got have incorporated a lot of the good ideas we'd already been given. We also want to get contact with the Diocesan Advisory Committee. They're the group through whom eventually the formal approval is given. But they've been extraordinarily helpful on an informal basis. When we were proposing to do this, they came and visited us, and we walked around and we talked about how it would look and the benefits of turning it around through 90 degrees and so on. And they were very positive, they were very encouraging. As a result of that, when the formal application went into them, it really went through without any real problems, at least not as far as they were concerned. And the other is the City Council. This is a conservation area that we're in, so obviously the way the building looks alongside the church and its environment is important. And again, in formal contact, we'll probably now allow them to say, yeah, we quite like that, but we'd prefer it if it was like this, and suggest that. All before, as it were, we've actually redrawn the plans. Next, please, Dave. In the autumn, there's a whole list of outside bodies we have to consult with. The Georgian Society, the Victorian Society, the Church Society, and so on. Now, we're rather hoping that unlike when we discussed the inside of the church, which was an existing building with its own aesthetic and attractive features, that because we're building an extension, many of them will be less inclined to be critical, because in a sense we're not affecting an existing building too much. But we have to ask them all, and we have to get their comments, and we have to give due consideration to them. So then we review all the comments that have come in, both from ourselves and from outside bodies. And then we say to the architect, right, we've looked at all of these, we think we need to revise the plans, let's do this, this and this, and obviously with his advice he'll advise what's the most practical thing to do. Next, please. Which means that by the spring, early spring of next year, we can formally submit the plans, the new revised plans as it were, to the DAC for their consideration. That will probably take a couple of months anyway. So approval hopefully come maybe by Easter time next year. Next, please, Ed. Which means by the summer, at least in terms of the planning process, we've reached a stage where we could go out to tender if the money has been raised or is in prospect. Now that's, in a sense, the next big bit of what I'm going to tell you about. Next, please, Ed. What about the money? Next, please. The original extension plans, and that was without taking into account the parish accommodation, the parish hall accommodation, would at today's cost £850,000, including VAT and fees. That's if we built them today. Next, please. Our present plans, of course, have more accommodation. They're bigger. So obviously it costs more because it takes the parish hall into account. Next, Ed. If we were to build this plan in 2016, the cost, that's obviously 2 years away. It's £1 million plus extra, because you have to allow for inflation, increase in building costs, and there may be contingencies. You may say, well, what are contingencies? Well, that's allowance for the unexpected. When we were doing the NCC building, it was an old building, of course, we knew that. But as the builders got into it, they discovered that the floors weren't level. They wouldn't take the weight of having more people on different floors. So we had to put in a steel infrastructure. You wouldn't know it now, it's completely hidden, but there's a complete steel frame inside that building. And this was at the time when China was buying up every bit of steel in the world that they could. And the price of steel just rocketed. And, we just had to say, all right. And as it happened, we had to modify other bits of the plan to take account of that. So these sorts of ifs and buts, in a sense, have to be taken into account. And as we get nearer to the date, we shall have a better idea of what it would cost. But it certainly is more than £1 million, which is a big, big sum of money. Although, for the amount of accommodation you're buying these days, it's, I suspect, not unreasonable. It's just a lot of money. So once the plans have been drawn up in detail, we'll have a better idea of what the cost is likely to be. Thank you, Ed. How do we raise the money? Next, please. We've already still got £50,000 in the building budget in the trust. I mean, that's great, really. We were delighted that the cost of what we've done here was within our original estimates and budgets. In other words, we weren't caught out by unexpected. So there's £50,000 in the budget. And a number of people, bless them, I don't know who they are, but there are a number of people who have made pledges to give money month by month or quarter by quarter, whatever it is, over the years ahead. And that means that by the end of 2017, which is not that very far away, almost £100,000 will be in the budget. And that's just on the money that's already being given. But of course we will need extra. £1 million plus is a great deal more than that. So it will mean more gifts from ourselves, both as one-off gifts and pledges to give regular sums over a period of time. Thanks, Ed. But we also recognise that a sum as big as that, we've really got to pull out all the stops on going to outside organisations and individuals, maybe local firms and so on, saying, can you help us? This is a very important development for us. This is why we need it. Can you give us some money to assist with it? Thank you. We might be able to take out a loan. Let's say, for example, we were short by, I don't know, £200,000 or £300,000, but we knew that pledges would be coming in over the next 5 or 10 years even. So we might be able to take out a loan to cover that in the knowledge that the money would be coming. Now that can help all of us in the sense that when we say, I can't give very much really, but I could give a smaller amount over 5 years or 10 years. And it's amazing how that mounts up. We saw that with the money raising that went to what we've done here now. It's amazing how even just a small amount, month by month or year by year, adds up. Thanks, Ed. So we need to identify organisations and people to whom we can make bids, and that's a big ask. Fortunately, we've got time to do it, but we need 1 or 2 people. We haven't, as it happens, on the teams at the moment, got anyone who's able and has the time to do this. So we're looking to find 1 or 2 people who can research potential funding sources. People aren't as generous as they used to be, and unfortunately, money for specifically religious buildings, are less available. And then there are some that we wouldn't accept anyway, like lottery money. So you have to do careful research of the sorts of organisations that we can reasonably look to. We need to identify when we can make the bids. Different organisations have different timetables during the year as to when you can make your bids to them. We need to put together a good case. Some organisations will be interested in work for children. Others may be interested in the disabled, or maybe in youth work. And if we can demonstrate from our plans which bit of what we're doing is particularly appropriate for that bit of work, then we can focus the bid and be more likely to get money for it. And then obviously we submit bids when the plans are ready and agreed. We have them, as it were, all prepared for that. So we need to pray about that. We really do need people who can start now. We've got a year, effectively, to do this, so it's not, as it were, stumbling over our feet to get it done. But it will take a good deal of research and development work. So maybe 1 or more of you today are the sort of people who could offer to help in this way. If we don't get going now, time will soon slip away, and then will be a last-minute panic, and that's less likely to be successful in getting money in. Thanks, Ed. So really that's the point to end on. We just need to pray that God's will be done if it's his wish to build the building. I mean, what I think we've described and where we've got to now is not exorbitant in terms of the accommodation. It's not over the top. It's not saying, well, we could have this and we can have that. The rooms we're talking about could be multi-use rooms and flexibly used and so on. But it is going to be a lot of money, and that's probably going to be the main issue that's going to either allow it to go ahead or not. And that's in our hands, but it's also very much in God's hands. So just pray for this. As you know, when we started talking about this, we were thinking about future generations as well as ourselves. The church, in God's blessing, is already filled on a Sunday morning, and the Sunday evening service is a good number as well. We want more people to be able to come in. We want to be able to do more. And I think with these buildings and God's blessing, we can do it. Thank you very much.